Now, this is a video, like a tutorial for propagating Plectranthus and geraniums, and these are the steps we just talked about. So here we go. We're going to prepare some stems for propagating of geraniums and Plectranthus. And the way you prepare the stems are to clip off all of the small little leaves down at the bottom. And I will be showing you a close-up of how to do this in a minute. But we're going to, this is going to make 2 stems to propagate. So we're going to clip this right here. And we can pinch these little leaves off because they're very tender. You can just pinch the tender ones off, like this, and go all the way up the stem. Okay, now look, we have a bud on the top here. We want no flowers and no buds because our new stem does not have any roots to grow by. So we're going to clip all of these large leaves off, and that stem is ready to be planted in our pot. Now, our pot has dry soil, and we fill it up to about halfway up to the top so that there will be room to water it and the water won't run out and the soil run out after you're finished. I like to use dry soil because it's easy to put these stems right down in the soil, just like that. Then the other one we cut off. Here's another tender one. Take this flower off. Another bud, take that off. There's a flower that's already bloomed. We're going to go all the way up the stem, trim off all of these leaves, and just clean this up. This is kind of like leaning over. I'm going to leave a tiny little shoot right here. That's going to branch out to the side, and these 3 on top, that'll be fine. This is a little funky, but that's okay. We'll stick that in the pot, just like that. Now, you're going to label your pot. These are coral. We just cut off pretty coral. I don't know the exact name of this geranium, but I do know the color of the flower. So, we are going to label this, and it's going to say coral geranium. That way we know what color. People like to know what color they're getting. Now, the next one is Plectranthus. We basically do the Plectranthus about the same way that we do the geraniums. These all have lots of large leaves that all need to be cut off. And look at that flower on top. What are we going to do with that? Going to cut it off because there's no roots to support flowers and leaves. We want to make more leaves, more roots, and then it will create new growth on the top. This is kind of funny shape, but I am going to take this out of this pot. We will have a pot now for our Plectranthus. Same way, dry soil, put it down in there, and put your label in it. Now, when we're finished, we're going to put these in a tray with water and leave it in a tray. If you do 2 or 3 or 4 of them, put them all in a big tray, put water in it and let it set overnight in the tray because that will soak up and moisturize this soil. So just leave it overnight, and then you'll want to keep them moist and in a protected area while they generate new roots. Now, some people like to use root tone or put them in water. I find, especially with geraniums and Plectranthus, just sticking them straight in the soil is the best way to propagate them. There are different opinions on root tone, but I never bother, and this seems to work. Here is a geranium I planted about maybe 6 weeks ago. There's several stalks in here. I always put 4 or 5 stalks in one pot if I can, if I have them. And this is rooted. Look, it's rooted and it's ready to go. And this is another one. I have one of these did not make it. So this has been planted for about 6 weeks, and these have obviously rooted and look nice. This is Plectranthus, but this one did not make it. So it depends on the plant, but I'm happy if I have more than a 50% success rate. Generally, I do have much more than 50%. This was 100%.
Okay, so that is kind of a tutorial of the overview of preparing our propagating our geraniums. This is going to be the close-up. You can see these stems see these nodes are where the roots are going to grow, and these stems is just a little bit of leaves at the top. So I'm going to show you just a 2-minute video. It has no audio. I'll just talk through it, and it's just a close-up of what I was showing you a minute ago. This is a geranium that has, we're going to make a couple of plants out of this, but it has a little, just start snipping them off, and those nodes where you snip it is where the roots are going to grow. Here's a little start going off to the side. So you snip just above that. So now I have two. You take one of them and start going up the stem, cutting close to your stem, and just clip off all of these leaves and just leave a couple of them at the top. You can see a little, see that bud? There's a bud there. We're going to cut that one off too. And there's a couple of side stems. So you can have like two at the top coming out of there. So that's ready to go. And then the other one we cut off has lots of leaves on it, but we need to take them off. And you can kind of see once you've cut the leaves off where the little side shoots at the top are going. I think there's 2 or 3 side shoots on this one, but just cut the largest leaves off and leave 2 or 3 or 4 leaves. And you've got like 3 or 4 starts. It'll be a nice little bushy start of that geranium. This is another type of a geranium. I think it's called a Valentine, but some of your geraniums are really bushy and have lots of leaves, and a lot of your scented geraniums are that way. And you really don't know what you're getting into when you're trimming them until you start clipping off those leaves. Now we're going to make a separate plant of that. And I'm going on up further up that stem, and you can see that one going off to the side. So I'm going to cut that really close to the stem because that'll root right at the bottom and all the way up this little stem. Now I cut all of these off. I could leave this last one, but that looks kind of like an asparagus, doesn't it? But I think that that one will root. So here's one that's pretty clean at the bottom, but I just pinched the tender branches, the tender leaves off of that one, and keep going up the stem. Just as you go, you'll see the little side shoots that shoot out, and then when you're at the top, you can leave more than one little side shoot. Oh, there's another bud. My geraniums want to bloom right now. There you go. That's ready to put in your pot. This is basil that I just pulled out of my garden to show you. I'm pinching the leaves off of that because they're tender. African blue basil is a perennial, and this one will root in water. In addition to, you can put it straight. Look at, there goes the flower. You can put it in the soil, but it's kind of fun to watch the basil on your kitchen counter rooting in water. And of course, I used all of that basil for whatever I was cooking that night for dinner. And then basil, you want to clip the little flower buds at the top because it will try to produce that flower, and we don't want it to do that when it's forming roots. So that's pretty much, see that tiny little flower there? I just pinched the top of that off. And basil, you can pinch the top couple leaves off of them when they start growing, and then it grows too. So it'll make it nice and bushy. There you go. It's for basil. All those nodes is where the roots are going to grow. Okay. Yeah, let me see. Okay, we have one more here. And this is that begonia I was showing you in the first slide, that big tall begonia. I cut it up into several little stems, and I'm going to go into more detail with that begonia right out there in the garden.
I'm going to show you how to propagate a begonia. I have this begonia that grows taller than I am every year, and it needs to be pruned. A couple years ago, I pruned this and planted them in this pot. And look at this, looks beautiful, and I need to prune this one and propagate it also. But it started out by taking a long stem, cutting it way down, and I can make several plants out of this one. So I'm going to cut the end off. I'm going to see where the start is right here, cut right above that, and this will be one. Cut a couple of leaves off of it and stick it in the soil. The next one, cut just above where it's taking off there. Cut a couple leaves off of it and stick it in the soil. Here's a little baby. I think I'll just cut this right here. I think we could propagate this little one also. Cut all these off. Then we'll stick this little one in the soil. And look at this. I'm going to do, this one has cut just above these two. And we're going to have two starts coming off of that. Cut off the flowers, cut off the extra leaves, put it in the pot, and then we have one more. I'm going to cut off all these leaves, flowers. I know we hate to cut those flowers, don't we? But it needs to make roots, not produce the flowers. There you go, one more. So I have put them all in this pot, and if you can't push them down in there, use one of these to make your hole, and that is going to make another beautiful pot of begonias just like this.
Okay, so this is our process right here we just talked about. And does anybody have any questions?
I have a question.
Okay.
This is Susan. Susan, I have a question. You
Yes.
said to put the pots in a tray and leave them overnight.
Mm-hmm.
But how much water do you give them afterwards?
Well, the pots will have drainage holes in them. So this is just, I leave them in the tray overnight so that it will soak up water to saturate the soil. And then when you set them out, they will drain. So they just keep it moist.
Okay.
Just keep it moist.
All right. Then just keep them moist. Okay. Well, that was something that I missed, I guess. Thank you.
That's okay.
Launa,
Yes.
question. Okay, you put those in fairly small pots. Looking forward to the plant sale, would it be good to transplant any of them into larger pots that they may be more valuable or less crowded, or does it just depend on the plant and how quickly it, propagates and gets secure? Should they be transplanted again before the plant sale?
In June. These are 4-inch pots. Most of them will be fine for June, just leaving them in the 4-inch pot. As far as plant sale goes, if it starts roots coming out the bottom of it, then I would definitely plant it in a 1 gallon, but you're going to need to do that at least a month before the plant sale, because you don't want the you know, a fresh new plant falling out of a gallon pot. And also you're using a lot more soil. So you want to make sure that it's going to be rooting in that 1 gallon pot. Now, if you have larger plants, you can start out in a 1 gallon pot. Like some of those Plectranthus had those, like I put those in that terracotta pot. It was 1 gallon size at least. So larger plants like that, you would start out in a 1 gallon.
Yeah, and especially like the African basil, that really is vigorous, you know, once it gets going. So that could be a candidate for a larger pot as well.
Right, right. I would check for roots coming out the bottom of it. When they start peeking through the bottom, then you know that that pot is full of roots and ready to move on to the next one.
Great.
Lana, I have a question.
Uh-huh.
So the stems, like in this picture, the far left, that's the Plectranthus. The stems are so tall and naked. When they do root, do leaves come out along the stem as well?
Well, the roots won't. You could definitely put that in a 1 gallon. That's what I was just mentioning, answering Mary's question. See how tall they are. If you put this in a 1 gallon, then you could bury this taller stem and you would have roots coming out of that. And then the plant would be closer to the bottom of the pot.
Okay.
But I think eventually this is going to grow leaves out of these little nodes anyway.
Okay, thank you.
I have a question.
Uh-huh.
It looks like you put in the soil, these stems are about 4 to 6 inches long. Is that correct?
Uh-huh. These are, the
okay.
Plectranthus are a little longer.
Okay, but I mean, 4 to 6 inches goes in the dirt, right? In the soil?
Yeah, well, maybe 3. Like this is a 4-inch wide. This is probably, what is it, how high is it? Maybe 6 inches high on the pot. So yeah, you have about 4 inches in the soil.
In the soil. Okay, so like at least 2 nodes.
Yeah.
Where, yeah, that's a place where two nodes there. So the roots would come out of both of those. Yeah.
Right. But see, these nodes are kind of far apart, whereas some of them that I was showing you, and like this one, see how close these nodes are together. So the more nodes you have under the ground, the soil, the more chances you have of more roots developing, because that's where they come out.
Okay, thanks.
Launa, this is Anna. Can you tell them what type of soil is best?
You know, I just use regular potting soil, just whatever you can, you know, whatever you have. I don't use anything fancy, just basic potting soil. I don't use the kind that has fertilizer in it and all of that. I just use basic potting soil. It doesn't need fertilizer yet. It just needs to grow its roots.
And when would it be the best, how long after you've planted these do you suggest to fertilize?
You know, when I'm planting for our plant sales, it's generally within a few months, like from now to June. I don't really fertilize unless I see that the new growth looks kind of pale. See, this is old growth here, old leaves, how they look kind of pale. I might give them a little bit of a liquid fertilizer, a fish emulsion or something like that. But generally, we just want to let them grow their roots and start growing the leaves on the top of the plant. So I don't think they need too much fertilizer for that. Shall we go on?
Sure.
All right. And we'll have a little bit of time at the end too. Okay, the next one. Now we're going to talk about dividing plants and bulbs. Now we're going to dig the whatever plant or bulb out of the ground or from an overgrown container. You know how they get where they're busting the seams. I use, my favorite tool is a garden fork, but a spade, shovel to break up the biggest clump. And then when they get smaller clumps like this, you want to break them up with your hands, pull out the weeds and the dead material. And then the most important thing when you're planting plants and bulbs that you've divided is to plant them at the same surface on the ground that they were growing in. And I'll go into more detail on that. Now, this is after our nice rain that we had and the wind you saw in the video. This is a Watsonia that I dug out of the ground, my favorite garden fork. So I just dug around the edge, lifted it up, pulled it out, and then kind of broke it apart with the garden fork or your spade or whatever you want, and pulled out the weeds and grass that was growing. Then I prepared them by trimming the green. These still had green on them, so I just kind of trimmed it, and then I planted it in the pot, or you plant it back in the ground. And you can see this is only about 1 inch down in the ground, but you see this light green color. When you look in the ground over here in the first picture, you see that kind of the light green color at the base. That is on top of the soil. And here it is on top of the part on top of the soil. And you see the roots are just below that. So when I put it in the soil, you want to plant it at that same depth. That is really important. Next one, these are bulbs. I borrowed these bulbs from Dolly, and I borrowed these cannas from Anna, thank you. And this was a clump that Dolly had dug out of the ground. I broke it up into pieces, and these are all the little pieces of the bulbs. These are iris bulbs. And iris bulbs, they were growing basically on top of the ground. I just stuck them in a pot right on top of the soil, and then did your watering like I had told before, like I had said before, because I like the water absorbing up into the pot, so I have more flexibility when I'm planting things, and I'm not breaking off roots and things. With dry soil, it's easier. And then with these cannas, you can see how much deeper in the soil these are. You can see the level where they were in the ground. Here's one, here's the leaves. You can see the level they were in the ground. So you're going to have more roots down under the ground on that. Now, if you have daffodils, and those will plant 3 or 4 inches under the ground. So the main thing is to plant them at the same depth that they were growing. So that ends this little segment. Do we have any questions about that? Dividing bulbs or plants?
This is Cindy.
Yes.
I just wanted to ask, are there pots available?
Yes. I have some pots, and Teresa Whitney has pots, 4-inch and 1 gallon pots. If anybody wants to pot up some of your plants for the plant sale, you're welcome to come to either one of our houses and pick them up.
Launa, I have another question.
Uh-huh.
I had a giant amaryllis, huge, and it was in a pot. And over time, it made side plants, multiplied in the pot. I took it apart, unfortunately, before you told me you needed a bulb to separate. And some of them, when they came off, they like broke.
Mm-hmm.
They all had green sticking out, which has now gone away. I planted them in the ground, and I guess I planted them at the level that the green would have shot out of the soil surface. So is that right? And is it okay that they broke? They entirely whole?
It's okay that they break. This is amaryllis here that I'm actually growing in water on my kitchen counter. I would plant them right at the base, not only because this is where the roots are growing from down here.
Okay.
But you know how you can put them in a glass of water and watch the roots grow? I'm just doing that for fun right now, because I had some back in a shady area that never bloomed, and so I pulled them out and did this with them.
Sure. I
think you'll be okay though.
Okay, well, an experiment.
Sure, I know, isn't it? Yeah.
Lana, this is Susan again. I have an amaryllis plant too that I got one year for Christmas, and it said to plant the whole bulb down under the soil. And now it's sent up, this year, it sent up some green leaves that are really tall and have completely flopped over. They're not upright anymore. What did I do wrong?
Oh, I don't know. You know, I'm not really an amaryllis expert. Like I said, I'm experimenting with these today, but I am not sure. You planted the bulb all the way up to the top?
It seems to me that that's what I was told to do. Yeah.
Mm.
But, and no, I take that back. It's not planted all the way up to the top. I had to cut the leaves off at the top,
Right.
right where you're talking about. And then I put it in the garage and it stayed there over the whole season. And then I brought it out probably end of October, first part of November, and it sent out 3 leaves that have since turned to yellow green, which probably means they don't have enough nourishment. But the leaves are tall and flopped over.
Hmm.
That's all I have. So maybe somebody else knows the secret.
This is Cindy. And I have many amaryllis. I don't do a thing to them. They're in pots in the backyard, always. And they bloom fantastic every year.
Hmm.
But they don't bloom until April.
So you don't cut the leaves off, the dead leaves off?
I don't got anything. I haven't divided. I got one plant and now I have 6 big containers of them.
Oh my, okay.
Susan, Mrs. Weech, I know that you are supposed to leave the leaves on bulbs, let them yellow.
Right.
Don't remove the leaves until they've had a chance. It's something to do with the nourishment to the bulb.
True.
I wonder if possibly you just didn't have the amaryllis in enough sun.
It
And-
might be. It might be. It's hard to say. But like I said, the leaves are not yellow, but they're kind of a yellow green. They're not the green, beautiful color they were the first time.
Yeah, I know that with like daffodils and tulips, you just have to put up with a lot of ugliness after the cool blooming.
Right, right. I have those too. Yes, I know. And I learned the secret from, I think it was from Launa, to braid the leaves
Right.
before they dry.
So what you do is when your bulbs are finished blooming and you've got all this green growth that's looking kind of bad, you can you need to leave that growth on there because the nourishment goes from the green leaves down into the bulb to store for next year to come out. So you can braid them. You can like just bend the whole thing over and take one of these and wrap around it and kind of tie it so it looks a little neater in the garden. But let's go on to my favorite part of this whole presentation is our succulents, okay? Now, this is a succulent container. I actually have it sitting in here. You have a container either with or without a drainage hole, and I'll talk to you a little bit more about that, but you need to know without a drainage hole, it uses very little amount of water. And I would recommend a moisture meter. I don't know if you can see this, a little moisture meter. It's a probe that goes in that you test your soil with if you have a pot without a drainage hole. And that way it'll tell you if it needs water or not. Now you're going to fill this pot with your dry potting mix again. You're going to prepare your succulent stems. I'm going to show you how to do that. And once you've gotten this far, prepared your succulent stems, you can wait. If you don't have time, you don't have to plant them right then. Some people wait just 24 hours for them to like crust over. You can wait a month or 2 before you plant a succulent cutting. I mean, they will grow roots in the air. So I usually don't. I just plant them right then. So I don't know how important it is to have them wait and crust over. So you want to prepare a variety of cuttings for your succulent pot. And I'm going to talk to you about the thriller, filler, spiller method, which is something that's fun to learn and it's something you'll use forever. Then you're going to embellish your pot with moss or rocks or shells. Now this is our thriller, filler, spiller method. Your thriller gives you height. Your filler fills in the base, and your spiller drapes over the edge. Now, these 3 pots I just had sitting around my garden. And when I was preparing to do this presentation and take some pictures, I realized that it just must be in my DNA right now, because I just automatically plant with thriller, filler, spillers. That's just kind of the way I do my plants. It's kind of the thriller, the filler down in here, and here's kind of a goofy looking spiller. So once you get this method down, you can even use it in arranging your flowers. You buy a bouquet of flowers, arrange your flowers, make sure you have the thriller, you have some filler, cut some of them really short around the base, and then get some ivy or something to drape over the edge. Now, I'm going to show you a short video of preparing your succulent cuttings, and then we are going to plant our little pot. So you can see these succulent cuttings have the stems, kind of like we did with our geraniums and our plectranthus. It's very similar. And let me see, we're on number 4, right here we go. I'm going to talk you through this because I have no video on this. This succulent has, you know, so many little starts on it that it's kind of like a flower. So you just cut those stems off. They don't have much growing down the stem, so they're ready to go right in your pot just like they are. This one, I'm going to leave these 2 together at the top, so you can use that as a thriller in one of your pots. And then I take off some of the bottom leaves on this one, and with succulents, you just twist them basically to take off the ones that are maybe too big or too low on your stem. There you go, that's one. Now we've got this one. We need to take off a lot of those stems on the base of that. Go get it up in the picture here. And we're going to use this in our little succulent pot that we plant. There you go, ready to go. We'll be planting that one in a minute. And this one, these are too tough to twist off, so I just clip those off. Is that an airplane, a helicopter plant or something? I'm not sure of its name. Here's another big long stem. I'm not going to use this one today, but I'm preparing it. There, I twisted that one off, but it's kind of tough to twist off. And that'll be a great spiller for a large pot. Oh, I love this one. Twist them. These twist off really easily. They're full of moisture and they just twist off. And then there's a little side shoot right here that I'm pulling off, and we're going to replant that too. And these twist off, and every piece that you twist off will actually root. You can just put those down right on the surface of your soil, and all those little pieces that you twist off of there, yeah, I would say at least a 50% chance of those rooting. Sometimes I'll put them down just in the base of my pot. There's that little piece that I took off. We're going to take a couple pieces off of that, and we're going to plant that in our little succulent pot. Just touch that right down in the soil. And what do we have here? That one would be okay just like it is, but I wanted to kind of trim it up to make it look like a little miniature tree, and we're going to use that as our thriller in our pot that we're going to plant in a minute. And these just pinch off really easily. And just make it look the way you want it to look. And like I said before, it doesn't have any roots on it, so it needs to make some more roots. Okay, that's done. Now, see those pieces that we trimmed off? They're about ready to go. Now this, we're gonna have my last video right here. This is another succulent pot that I just had sitting around my yard. It's an old wooden box. So I took a picture of it for you, and I don't know how long I've had it planted, but look, there's the thriller, here's the filler, and here's the spiller. Okay, let's watch this video.
Today we're going to make a succulent pot with this cute little pot that does not have a hole in it. Now, without a hole, that means you need to water very little because the succulents don't take a lot of water. So it's nice to have a pot without a hole though, so you can put it on your coffee table if you want it in your inside the house. So we're going to start with the thriller, filler, spiller method. So we're going to do the thriller, which are these nice tall succulents. Stick them down in here. I'm going to use 2 and stick them down in here all the way down. You can use a skewer if you want, but and then these are kind of top heavy, so press the soil really firmly right around the base of these. There we go. Now we're going to, that's thrill. Now we're going to fill. So we're going to fill in with these cute little succulents. Here's a nice little filler. This will fill in lots of space right here. Fill in the bottom. All right, before I go any further, let's put our spiller in, okay? Thriller, filler, spiller. Spiller is going to spill over the edge just a little, just to kind of give it a casual look. This could be a spiller also. This is some fish hook. You can spill him down over here if you want to do that. Let me see. I'll tuck him under this filler. And then we'll put some more fillers in. Now, if you're going to set this on a coffee table, you're going to want it to look good from all sides. So you're going to want to fill in with some filler on the back side also. So we're doing that. Let's put this little guy in here. There we go. Take a look around. This is a really pretty succulent. I like this one. Stick it down in there. This little guy, we took him off of a little edge of here. I'm going to put him on the back. And here's one more. Okay, now we have our thriller, filler, and spiller. Now we're going to embellish it. You can embellish it with sphagnum moss or Spanish moss. It always looks nice to have a little moss in there. Kind of finishes it off. And then add some rocks. A little rock over here maybe. And we're at the beach. Maybe put a shell in there. Let's put a shell on the back side over here. So there you go. Isn't that a cute little pot? I'm sure your friends would love to have a gift of a little pot like this. And this will all root, and it probably won't change much for months.
Okay, now we're to our question and answer. And this is another pot that I had in my garden. As you see, this is an old wooden toolbox. I planted it, I don't know how long ago it was, but look at the thriller there. And these are all thrillers, but look at it's blooming now, the thriller, filler, spiller. Any questions about planting a succulent pot or propagating your succulents? Everybody's going to plant a couple of pots that we can sell at our plant sale.
Launa, you did such a good job, I guess. Answer all our questions before we had them.
Great
I just wanted to say, this is Sherry. Launa, thank you for that idea of the thriller, spiller, and filler. I said it wrong, but I've never heard that technique. But that's great for a design. Thank you.
You're welcome. I think it'll be, once you get that concept, you'll find yourself using it a lot.
Mm-hmm.
So,
and Sherry, excuse me, Launa, sorry. That certainly works with any sort of container plant, not just succulents. And it's fun to find all the, I like the spillers, so many different types.
You know, another thing you might keep in mind is that you should look at how the succulent grows in like 6 months or a year, because some of those succulents that look like they might be low, they're going to become tall. So you might see what the general, you know, future of that succulent is, so that you know that you know, that the tall ones are going to be taller and the middle ones are going to be middle and the spillers are going to be spillers.
Yeah. Yes, that is
The
true.
nature of them.
Mhm. And I found that some of my pots that I planted and some of the succulents get bigger than I want them. That's the time to just trim them and make a new pot and then just stick another succulent right back in that little pot. So there's lots of things that you can do with those succulents. Now, I just want to summarize. We propagated our geraniums, plectranthus, and our begonias all basically the same way. We divided our bulbs, and the main thing is to watch for the depth to plant them. And then we did our succulent pot. We prepared the stems, and then we used the thriller, filler, spiller method. I just want to remind you that our plant sale is June 12th. So you can take these tips, make up some pots, plant some plants, and get them ready for yourself and for our plant sale. And that